It looks like Iowans who have lost their jobs will get pushed back to work sooner. State House Republicans are working on a final agreement regarding this. House Speaker Pat Grassley will join us here to explain why he says the changes will help with all of these now hiring signs we see across our state. He's also going to have an answer for critics who say that his party's plans are just punishing Iowans at a vulnerable time. There's also a new poll out. It shows persistent problems for the president. See how pessimistic people are about the economy and how they back the president's policies on Ukraine, but they still don't think that he's doing a good job handling that issue. And then we have Madam President. We're going to talk with the Iowa native who's about to do something that no one has ever done in 126 years at this Iowa university.
From your local election headquarters, this is The Insiders with Dave Price.
Not enough new residents, not enough workers, and more open jobs than unemployed. That's Iowa's situation right now. Now, some Iowans retired early because of COVID-19. Maybe they left the job force to care for a relative or educate somebody. Well, State House Republicans want to help this crunch in the workforce and try to push the unemployed back to the job force sooner. Under the idea here, the unemployed would get 4 months max to collect benefits instead of 6.5 months like it is now. Here's another change here, a lot of numbers here, but the average Iowan, according to the Census Bureau, makes about $33,000. So under the changes here, if you're unemployed by your second week of unemployment, you'd have to be willing to take a job that paid at least 90% of that original 33 grand. Otherwise, if you turn that down, you say you're not willing to take that, you won't be able to get unemployment benefits in the future. And then it just goes down as you go here. Weeks 4 and 5, it drops to 80%. By the end here, weeks 9 through 16, toward the end of the benefits, if you get a job that pays at least 60%, you got to be willing to take it. And by then, you're talking making less than 20 grand. House Speaker Pat Grassley says all these changes are reasonable.
We haven't had significant changes to the unemployment system of this magnitude in decades. And so I think the first thing that we bring up is we're living in a different age today. You could go probably in the next 24 hours and find a dozen jobs probably paying very good wages, probably even similar in most cases to what you're making right now. So some of this is also just modernizing the current system that we have. And, there's a lot of accusations that somehow this is just the entire package of what the legislature is looking at to address the workforce issue we have here in the state of Iowa. And I've said all along, and I think many others have, this is just one more piece of that. There's so many pieces. Not one bill will solve the workforce shortage that we have right now, but this is one of those pieces. And so as we look at this bill, we cannot be keeping people out of the workforce because of government benefits being out there. Yes, we need to have that safety net to make sure that people that find themselves in unfortunate circumstances, but 4 months is what this will be. And we think that that's a very, very fair amount of time. And again, also I remind Iowans that we have an unemployment trust fund to make sure it maintains its solvency long term. We've already had to put about $700 million worth of federal funds into that. So ultimately to have a solvent unemployment fund, which ultimately if that doesn't exist, then there are no benefits to be had. We have to be looking at these decisions and being forward thinking. But again, this is just one piece of trying to continue to work on the workforce shortage that we have in the state.
You mentioned that a lot of jobs would be out there and for more money. Now, for Des Moines, Sioux City, Cedar Rapids, kind of the bigger towns. But what about like back home for you, New Hartford or some of these other smaller communities? If you had a major employer in town that laid off a couple dozen people, do you think people could find a new job within a couple of weeks?
Well, what I'm hearing and quite frankly, this isn't just in rural Iowa, not just in urban Iowa. Everywhere I go, not only do you see those signs that say help wanted, but when I talk to employers, they're desperate for a workforce. Not only it doesn't even have to be trained in some cases. I've been told, if I just need people that will consistently show up to work, we will train them on our dime. We'll make sure they have benefits. We'll make sure they have everything they need to be successful in this career path. So I would say it's all across the state. It isn't just a shortage in the urban parts of the state. And quite frankly, in a lot of communities like in my district, a lot of those folks commute to an area like Black Hawk County, and the need for work is just as high there as it is anywhere else.
What are you all doing this session, do you think, big picture, that will just on the simplest level get more people to move here? You're trying to incent people back into the workforce more quickly here, but we're still growing super slowly. We still haven't recovered all the jobs that we had before COVID hit us here. And you got people retiring early because of COVID and for other reasons here. What's it going to take? What do you think you all have done this session that's going to address that problem that's really been something for the last couple of generations, really?
Yeah, and I would say, today's, days like we've had this week where you wake up and there's snow or temperatures that are unforeseen after some really nice days, we've always got that working against us. So we recognize that. So what do we have to do to make sure that our policies give us the best opportunity to be competitive? Obviously, we passed a significant tax package, and a lot of the focus is just on the reduction of the personal income tax, which is a huge deal. But don't forget, we've also in that eliminated retirement income as well, not only to attract people to move to the state and look what that long-term investment may look like, but keep those people here in the state. No one should leave the state because of tax decisions. I would say looking back over the last 2 years, elections matter. Elections have consequences. The consequence of electing a leader like Governor Reynolds and the House and the Senate being in control the way we have, we've kept this economy open. One of the first bills we did last year, made sure that we had schools in person, those kinds of things that we want to show that leadership matters, and the way we try to keep our state open through what we saw in these global pandemics. You're seeing people flee some of the states that have made different decisions. So we hope that, with some of the continued tax changes, we have to continue to invest in, place-making things here in Iowa. You're going to see some of that reflected through our budget. We want Iowa to be attractive for people not only to come here, but stay as well. And so, I really think ultimately it's about the leadership we've had in the state and the direction that we're on.
One additional footnote on unemployment. You and the Senate have different versions here, so you all are going to have to figure out whether you want to have that 1 week waiting period before people could actually get benefits. How's that going to get settled?
Well, to be honest, those conversations are obviously going to happen. A lot of that has just evolved very quickly through not that it rushed through the process, but the fact that there's that difference is something that we really haven't had a bunch of time to work on at this point. I think the positive thing that I take away from it is there is some agreement on the overall reduction to the 16 weeks and a lot of other pieces within that bill. While that is one piece that's not in there, the House felt pretty strongly that after listening to our labor unions, our construction trades, that was very important for training and some level of assurance to be able to continue that. That was why we made the decision to take it out in the House. But obviously, we'll work. We would like to get something done on this, so we'll work with the Senate to see if there's a middle ground there.
And when you talk about the way you're looking at funding the regents, collectively, you all are kind of looking at this idea maybe sort of targeted additional money to help specific areas that could address the worker shortage. Explain why go that route, and will that hurt other areas here for the regents that'll essentially get a pay cut when you factor in inflation?
Well, here's what I'm going to say. Everybody keeps continuing to say that there's inflation, and not to make sure I answer that question. I'm not trying to get around that because I do want to talk about that. But we recognize there is inflation. Again, elections have consequences, and what we're seeing from policies from this administration looks like a willingness to not try to tackle some of the inflation, the factors that are out there. That's frustrating. So we have to try to control what we can control. So back to your original question about the direct impact of our decision, we feel in the House that we need to be partners with our regents' universities. We have a workforce shortage. That didn't just happen overnight. So we feel it's very important for us to be partners, and the state being a partner from the standpoint of we incentivize the regents to go out and find students that want to enter these high demand career fields. And if they can do that, and they should be doing that, we should expect them to be doing that the state is willing to put some skin in the game and incentivize that with scholarships to help keep people not only in these high demand fields, but to also keep them here in the state of Iowa, which is a component of that as well. So I actually look at this as long-term, or actually in hindsight, this is something I think we should have done a long time ago. And long-term, I think this really drives our regents institutions to want to go out and find the students that they can get into these programs. We can't just continue to ignore the fact that we have a list of high demand jobs out there. And what are we doing to incentivize folks entering into those career paths? We're not forcing anyone to do it. We feel we should incentivize doing it, and that's what this does.
But I guess my point is, can you do both here? Can you give extra for those specific areas to help them accomplish that, but still fund the rest of the stuff with a little bit more money?
I mean, that's obviously a conversation that's going to have to be had. We feel strongly enough right now that, again, as you know, basically everything we've talked about up to this point has dealt with workforce. We feel that it is such a critical issue within the state. We're willing to, fully invest in a plan like this. $12 million isn't, it would be the most significant investment we made in the last several years when it comes to any new dollars into the regions. So we feel we're kind of putting our money where our mouth is and saying, this is the immediate priority, these career paths and these high demand jobs. That's where we think that we need to, push all of our chips on the table and make sure we're doing everything we can to address that current situation we have.
Stepping back and looking at kind of medium and long-term goals here, when you get all the tax cuts fully phased in, along with some of the other things you all are doing here, you have Democrats saying, hey, once these all get kicked in here 4 or 5 years down the road, the state's going to not be taking in, a couple $2 billion a year, and you all are going to, whoever's in there will have to make some pretty dramatic cuts in state services. Do you agree with that? And do you see things that'll have to be cut?
There has not been, I've been here this is my 16th year. There has not been a year where we either discussed or passed a tax cut where that threat was not made by the Democratic Party that this was going to lead to mass cuts in services. When we made every budget decision that we've made going back to 2018, don't forget we're coming off of the previous largest tax cut in 2018. We were told the sky was going to fall. And as you've seen, the sky has not fallen. We've in fact had continued record levels of growth. As we've put together this latest tax package, we were very conservative in our estimates of revenue growth. The House felt very strongly that we should use a 3.5% model to make sure that we weren't going out there and saying, oh, we're just going to have huge overruns in revenue. We used a model that was very close to the averages that exist out there over the past 10 to 20 year period in the state of Iowa. And so as we developed that policy, we looked at that. We looked 5 years out. Now, no one can predict 5 years, regardless of tax cut or not. But if you look over the next 3 and even out to 5 years, this plan works. And in fact, we're going to continue to have significant revenue and potential significant reserves in the taxpayer relief fund. With our most recent update, you're looking at that fund to continue to grow over the next 4 to 5 years to offset any potential unforeseen revenue adjustments or revenue loss that we may have to the state.
I'll be back a bit later for the Insider's Quick Six, including whether the governor will get her plan to help students switch over to private school using tax dollars. But first, a disconnect for the president.